Well, hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast. I am Tom Rennie. Brian Dunseth is with me. We aren't recording full programs for the next 3 or 4 weeks or so because Dunny and I are having some holiday. And frankly, it's the European close season. So I'm kind of redundant at this moment in time. So I'm going to be on holiday. Mainly it's me, to be fair. It's my fault, this. But the good thing is, Tim Horsey, our producer who works far, far too hard to produce this program, but I think to great results. When he's not on holiday himself, long weekend. It's always a long weekend in Horsey land. He has been collating a selection of questions sent in by you, our dear listeners, on the various social media platforms. Week in the Tackle on Twitter, Thomas J. Rennie on Twitter, Brian Dunseth on Instagram, replies on YouTube, and all that sort of stuff. Our reviews on Apple and Spotify. All things you can keep on doing, by the way. So, Tim, you've been collating some questions as sent in. What are today's questions?
All right, let's start here with an Apple review. This comes from Reefy, who left us a review on Apple and then wrote a question there after an episode. And Dunny, I got to start with you here on this one.
Okay.
What is your best Dunsethery moment?
Ooh, best. It started young. I was about, I think, 11 or 12 years old. And I was playing club soccer in Southern California, was playing with a club called Upland Celtic. And we were playing a team called Diamond Bar Warriors. And there was a guy on the team named Ben Hooper, who would subsequently go on to be my college teammate at Cal State Fullerton, one of my best friends. We started Bumpy Pitch and the Original Winger, clothing line and online brand, all that. He was really good. So I tackled him one time, kind of stepped on his boot. Boot fell off. I picked it up and acted like I was going to give it to him, and I chucked it down the field, 12 years old. Made him go chase it. Complete. Sorry, Tim. So that's the start of the Dunsethery in my mind as early as 12 years old, when I walked up to him, acted like I was going to give him a shoe back, and just threw it and then ran and chased the ball.
I love you got a personal memory of it. I mean, in general, I'm not as big as fan of the outhouse or the Dunsethery as you are. You love it so much, we've named it after you. But I really do admire when teams do whatever they can to slow the clock down. And my favourite was Wolverhampton Wanderers against Arsenal last year. In the end, Wolves lost the game in additional time, so it didn't work out for them. There was a great bit in the game where Wolves are going to make a substitution. You've got the whole rules now about, you've got to go off at the nearest exit point.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think it's Raul Jimenez is going off. And Wolves put up one number, and they're like, oh, no, it must be another number. And so one player walks off on the other side, and they're like, oh, no, it's the other number, come back. And he comes back. They put another number up, and then the player starts walking back over to that side again. And they're like, no, you got to go over to that side. We're 4 minutes in here. And then he's got to come back over to this side. And Arsenal's players are like, what is happening here?
Yeah,
and they put up, and you'll never convince me otherwise, a fake substitute they were going to do, and then did the real substitute and told the guy who wasn't coming off, we're going to do this, son, walk over that side. They wasted about 4 minutes. Very nearly were able to Dunseth their way to a win at Arsenal. They were 1-0 up at the time. Blew it in the end, because it's always a stupid idea to do this. And never let 10 minutes be added on at Arsenal. Yeah. Okay? That's something maybe we've learned at this point. So that was one of my favorites, I think.
All right, let's move over to a more serious question. We're going to try and mix them in here for all of our listener episodes here. This comes from Twitter and Hugh on Twitter. And Dunny, I'm actually going to start again with you here. It says, now that we know the international future for Flo Balogun, obviously now a U.S. men's national team player, what do you think his club future will be?
I'm fascinated by this one, because I don't think one has any effect on the other. I don't think by committing to the U.S. men's national team that it takes anything away from what he did because he had a fantastic season. I'm intrigued. I would go back, even if it had nothing to do with the U.S. men's national team, right? Even if I don't have one foot in the Homer camp on this. I don't understand why Arsenal wouldn't look at what he did last season in France and think that he could be a really valuable addition to the squad. Now, I don't have any inkling or an idea if he doesn't want to go back, because obviously that has a huge effect. I don't have any idea whether Mikel Arteta rates him enough to say, okay, this isn't a financial thing. He was fantastic. He's gained kind of like the William Saliba situation. We put him over in France. We let him develop. And then we can bring him back, because he's obviously shown he can score goals. or this is just a, hey, business deal, Kroenke behind the scenes. Let's maximize the potential of this kid and bring in another 20 to 20 million, 25 million that could then help continue to fund what the squad redevelopment looks like underneath Mikel Arteta. I've heard all the links. I've heard the AC Milans. I've heard all of those things. I think wherever he ends up, he is a savvy enough kid with his family and his agent to recognize that the situation that he walks into has to be, I don't want to say promised, but insinuated that he is going to play significant minutes. Wherever he lands, I know that you would assume that the player would want some type of European football attached to said club, whether that's Conference League, whether that's Europa League, or that's Champions League. I think that depends, but we also understand the transfer fee, the financial package that the player is going to want, including bonuses, and then the opportunity to play in Europe is going to be a carrot that he will be chasing. So where he ends up, I don't know. Let's say AC Milan, let's say whatever. That's all fine and dandy, but I don't think it'll heat up until after he plays against Mexico on Thursday night or this past Thursday night, depending on where you're listening. Because I think that that CONCACAF Nations League game and then the final afterwards in Las Vegas will be probably the final tilt of, oh, okay, he dominated that game. Okay, that's what we needed to see. Or, you know what? He wasn't really that big of an influence that we expect him to be against Mexico and or in the final. Maybe he's not the right player for us.
Let me ask you a follow-up on that, because on Balogun, I have seen him a couple of times in highlights and, YouTube reels and stuff, but I've not seen a great deal of Ligue 1 this season. The Will Steele story was interesting for a while, but it didn't make me sit through an entire one of their games.
Yeah.
But is there an equivalent player that I would know, that maybe our listeners would know more, that you can compare him to in terms of quality? Because look, you come in as a striker in the USA. We've done it for ages now. There ain't been a good striker for a long time. There's not been a good enough striker for a long time, right? Whatever way we slice that conversation, that's where we've landed. So he's been convinced to choose the USA, the men's national team. Great. The record looks good on paper. I don't know. Is he Ollie Watkins? Is he Mikel Antonio? Is he Lautaro Martinez? Is there an equivalent you can give us?
I would say, it's funny, right when you started saying that, I would say he's a mix of maybe a Tammy Abraham and an Ollie Watkins. I would kind of put him, I wouldn't say he's either or from what I've seen. I would kind of put him maybe right in between. I would say he's not as like point strikerish, big strikerish as like, say, a Tammy Abraham, but I don't know if he's like running the line the same exact way Ollie Watkins. So I'd say maybe somewhere in between that is how I would equate. I think he's brilliant with his size. I think he's brilliant with his pace. I think he's super intelligent with the way he makes his movement. I think right foot, left foot, everything that I've seen so far, it insinuates to me that he can smash a ball, he can place a ball, he can curl a ball. He's technical enough in his finishing that he doesn't have to overpower you. He almost slows himself down, which I think is, for a young player, that kind of separates. Like he's not going to go and just hit it as hard as he can because he's feels the pressure that he's got to beat the goalkeeper. He can kind of like pick his angles. He can pick his spots. So that's what I would explain it as. But again, having not seen enough of him in real time, I think seeing him with this generation of US players is why everybody's so excited. For you, he's a number, he's a squad player. For us, he checks a box that we haven't had. And at the same time, we do a thing where we overhype kids really early.
Never.
Yeah, no, it's true. No, it's true. We do this thing where we're like, oh my God, he's amazing. This is the answer. But we haven't had an answer for a long time at the number 9 spot.
I mean, my only thing on this, as I've said, I've not seen him a great deal, though I've enjoyed winding Danny up about him having to go to America because you can't find anyone else. But on the Arsenal perspective, the reason he's not going back to Arsenal is because he counts as a homegrown player. And if you sell a homegrown player, that helps on your FFP. So if they're going to have a big spending summer at Arsenal, Declan Rice and Kai Havertz are the two big names on the day we record the program. That's nearly £200 million of the spending. It's got to be offset somewhere. And you sell a homegrown player, it's more financially advantageous to do that than selling someone you've already signed. So I think he has been fattened up to sell. I don't think if you've got a long-term plan to do that, you change that because of a good season in the team that finished 11th in Liga. Right, that's Question Time episode for number 1 for the summer. We've got more Question Time episodes to come, so stay subscribed to the Week in the Tackle podcast. There's more questions that you have asked us to answer, so if you don't stay subscribed, you won't hear us answer, and we'll endeavour to answer all of them, not necessarily honestly. This has been the Week in the Tackle podcast. That is Brian Dunseth. I'm Tom Rennie, and Tim Horsey produced the programme.